July 2026, Okinawa Prefecture, Japan. A concrete launch site at an undisclosed location within the first island chain. A U.S. Army battery commander from the 1st Multi-Domain Task Force receives a coordinate string. The target is a simulated PLA naval surface group. Distance, 1,700 miles. He has one weapon system available. The long-range hypersonic weapon. Call sign, Dark Eagle. Dark Eagle carries a common hypersonic glide body, a maneuvering re-entry vehicle that exits the atmosphere, re-enters at Mach 17, and reaches its target in under 12 minutes from this range. 12 minutes. That is the total response window available to any Chinese air defense battery tasked with intercepting it. The HQ-9B, China's most capable deployed surface-to-air missile system, has a maximum intercept altitude officially rated at 30 kilometers and a terminal engagement envelope designed for targets moving at Mach 4 to Mach 6. A Mach 17 glider descending on a depressed maneuvering trajectory does not fit that envelope. It does not fit it at all. We will come back to this battery commander and what he reported after the simulated firing solution was executed. But to understand why this single exercise matters more than any Pentagon press release from the last 5 years, you need to know what happened in the decade of development that put this weapon on that island. The long-range hypersonic weapon program did not start as a Pacific deterrence tool. It started as an Army answer to a problem the Air Force and Navy had been living with for years. The anti-access, area denial corridor that China has been building across the Western Pacific since roughly 2010. The DF-21D anti-ship ballistic missile. The DF-26 intermediate range system. The HHQ-9 naval surface-to-air battery. Layer by layer, the PLA built a weapons architecture designed to push U.S. carrier strike groups beyond effective strike range of the Chinese mainland and of Taiwan specifically. The math is not complicated. A carrier-based Fa-18E Super Hornet has a combat radius of roughly 720 kilometers without tanking. To strike targets inside Taiwan from a safe operating distance, a carrier would need to operate about 800 to 900 kilometers from the Chinese coast. The DF-21D has a range of 1,500 kilometers. That means the carrier enters the kill zone before its aircraft can reach their targets. The carrier is the target. That is the problem the long-range hypersonic weapon was built to solve, and built to solve from the ground up. Not from a carrier deck. Not from a submarine tube. From the first island chain itself. From Okinawa, from Guam, from the Philippines. Positions where a ground-based launcher can hold PLA surface groups at risk without exposing a carrier strike group to the DF-21D envelope. The common hypersonic glide body, the C-HGB, is not a ballistic missile in the traditional sense. A ballistic missile follows a predictable arc. Radar systems can calculate the impact point within seconds of detecting the launch. Intercept geometry becomes solvable. That is precisely why the PLA's anti-ballistic missile architecture, including the HQ-19, still developmental as of mid-2026, is built around ballistic trajectories. The C-HGB does not fly a ballistic trajectory. It is boosted into the upper atmosphere by a two-stage solid rocket motor. Then it separates and glides. At Mach 17, while maneuvering laterally. The terminal phase involves altitude changes and azimuth deviations that defeat the fire control solutions of every currently deployed Chinese intercept system. The HQ-9 and HHQ-9 rely on a predictable approach vector. A maneuvering hypersonic glider at Mach 17 does not give a fire control radar a stable solution. The tracking window is too short. The angular rate of change is too high. The intercept missile cannot get to the right place in time. In practical terms, Dark Eagle, once launched, cannot be intercepted by any system China currently has in operational deployment. Here is where the picture gets more complicated, and this is the part that most open-source coverage gets wrong. The question is not whether the C-HGB can be intercepted. The question is whether it can be targeted in the first place. A hypersonic glide vehicle launched from Okinawa at a PLA carrier group 1,700 miles away requires targeting data accurate enough to guide a Mach 17 maneuvering body to within lethal radius of a moving surface target. that data cannot come from the launcher itself. It has to come from somewhere else. According to Congressional Research Service reporting on Army hypersonics and publicly available Army Futures Command briefings from 2025, the kill chain for the LRHW relies on a layered sensor architecture. Space-based overhead persistent infrared systems for initial detection and tracking, over-the-horizon radar for surface group localization, and potentially signals intelligence from theater assets providing carrier group position updates in real time. The launcher is the last mile. The sensor architecture is the first 99%. What is most surprising about this capability is not the missile. It is the targeting architecture behind it, and how deliberately the Army has built it to function without GPS, which China can jam, and without theater communication links, which China can degrade. The C-HGB is designed to operate in a contested electromagnetic environment. The kill chain is designed to close even when China is actively trying to break it. One detail from the Army Futures Command acquisition documentation stays with you. The targeting update timeline for a moving surface group at 1,700 miles means the weapon needs a position fix accurate to within roughly 10 meters, updated within the last several minutes of flight. At Mach 17, the terminal phase is brief, but the guidance system is capable of terminal maneuver updates from onboard seekers in the final approach. The vehicle is not purely ballistic even at the end. It is actively guided. That means even if China degrades the space-based targeting chain, the C-HGB retains residual terminal guidance capability that makes it effective against surface groups that... If you were sitting in a PLA strategic planning session in July 2026, how would you account for a weapon system your entire existing air defense architecture cannot intercept? Comment your answer. We read every response. The PLA's answer, to the extent it shows up in open sources, appears to be the DF-27. China has been developing and testing the DF-27 through at least 2025, according to Defense Intelligence Agency annual threat assessments and Pentagon reporting to Congress. Like the C-HGB, it follows a boost glide trajectory and maneuvers in the terminal phase. Its range is officially undisclosed, but analysts estimate between 5,000 and 8,000 kilometers, with a terminal speed in the Mach 10 to Mach 15 range. What that means in combat, the DF-27 is not a mirror image of the LRHW. It is a different kind of instrument entirely. The LRHW is a theater weapon designed to hold PLA carrier groups at risk within the first and second island chains. The DF-27 is a strategic weapon designed to hold U.S. carriers at risk across the entire Pacific, including operating areas near Hawaii and Guam that were previously considered beyond Chinese reach. The consequence is that the geographic sanctuary U.S. carrier strike groups relied on for force generation, the ability to sortie from Guam, from Pearl Harbor, from positions well outside the first island chain, is no longer sanctuary. The DF-27 closes that distance. Every U.S. carrier in the Pacific is now potentially within range of a weapon system that the Aegis combat system, in its current configuration, was not built to intercept. What this tells us honestly about the current state of Pacific deterrence is that both sides have arrived at roughly the same conclusion at roughly the same time. Surface ships can no longer operate with impunity beyond ballistic missile range. The LRHW ended that assumption for Chinese carriers near the first island chain. The DF-27 is trying to end it for U.S. carriers across the full Pacific basin. What had not been fully appreciated in open-source analysis before the July 2026 deployment is how specifically the first multi-domain task force was structured to exploit this capability. The MDTF is not a traditional artillery unit with a hypersonic bolt-on. It is a purpose-built formation that integrates the LRHW launcher with the sensor architecture, the communication networks, and the cyber and electronic warfare capabilities required to close the kill chain in a denied environment. The battery commander at Okinawa in July 2026 was not operating a single weapon. He was operating the terminal node of an integrated sensor-to-shooter system spanning space, cyberspace, and the electromagnetic spectrum. Will the DF-27 force the U.S. to develop a Pacific-wide hypersonic intercept architecture within the next 5 years? Comment yes or no. This is the strategic question every defense planner is sitting with right now. The LRHW also has real problems. The system requires significant logistical infrastructure, the launcher, the booster stages, the C-HGB itself, that is not easily repositioned under fire. A PLA precision strike against the launcher site at Okinawa before weapon employment could neutralize the capability before it is ever used. The Army knows this. The solution, according to publicly available Army Futures Command roadmap documents, involves mobile launcher variants and dispersal doctrine, spreading launchers across multiple first island chain locations to force the PLA to solve a targeting problem across dozens of potential sites simultaneously. But as of July 2026, that dispersal architecture is still maturing. The battery at Okinawa is a known location. That is a vulnerability operational planners have not fully resolved. Back to July 2026. The battery commander at Okinawa received the coordinate string. He executed the simulated firing solution. The exercise concluded with the targeting chain closed, the simulated engagement successful, and the first multi-domain task force reporting operational proficiency to Army Pacific Command. What that report confirmed was not simply that the weapon worked. It confirmed that the complete kill chain, space-based targeting, over-the-horizon radar integration, electromagnetic spectrum management, and terminal guidance functioned in a realistic Pacific operational environment against realistic PLA surface group geometries at the ranges that actually matter. The Dark Eagle flew its simulated profile. The carrier group did not survive the engagement geometry. And Beijing, which has been reading every USNI News dispatch about this deployment, understood exactly what that exercise was telling them. The LRHW is operational. It is deployed. It is within range of Chinese carrier assets from the first island chain. And there is currently no Chinese air defense system that can intercept it. The question now is not whether the U.S. has a hypersonic advantage in the Pacific. The July 2026 deployment confirmed that it does. The question is whether that advantage holds as the DF-27 matures, as China develops the HQ-19 intercept system, and as the PLA invests in the sensor architecture required to close its own long-range kill chains against U.S. surface groups operating across the full Pacific basin. The answer is not written yet, but both sides are writing it now, in deployment decisions and acquisition budgets and exercise reports that will determine who owns the Pacific battle space in the decade ahead. If this kind of analysis is what you come here for, subscribe. Next week, the DF-27's targeting architecture and the one vulnerability that U.S. planners believe China has not yet solved.